Ready to stop spinning your wheels and start moving your business forward? You're in the right place. On each episode of Accelerate to Achieve, we'll discuss a crucial step in the journey, offering tips and advice that you can apply immediately within your own company. From financial management to customer success to digital transformation, we'll cover it all while providing leadership lessons from top industry insiders. In just 15 minutes, you'll be inspired to build momentum through action and achieve incredible results. Welcome to Accelerate to Achieve, the podcast that moves you from question to answer and idea to execution.
Hello, and welcome back to the latest edition of the Accelerate to Achieve podcast. We are moving on in our Spotlight series, and I'm your host, Ryan Walter, the founder of Parrels Advisory. Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. This can be said both for the decisions we continue to make, as well as those we fail to embrace. Can lessons learned about how we run components of our businesses in the past be applied elsewhere? Our guest today will be helping us explore an area where innovation could be said to be moving at a glacial pace. Joining us on the show today is Jeff Young, a founding partner of onPurpose Growth. He's passionate about supporting sales strategy with profit. With a wealth of experience leading sales for multiple companies, including several startups, he's going to let us know why challenges achieving sales success are often not a people issue. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
I really appreciate it, and I do appreciate your glacial pace reference. I think that's spot on.
Well, they may all be melting away, but we'll at least hold on to that for now. Could you, for our audience, provide just a quick introduction and a little bit more information about yourself?
It's my least favorite topic to talk about, so I'll do it pretty quickly. I've got a background in both sales and process improvement. If you take the systems thinking and apply it to sales, that's my background. I learned that through some of the greatest minds and learning from the greatest minds that have ever done it. And I've applied it as the chief revenue officer in 2 different stops, and then multiple different stops as the head of sales. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely does, and I think it sets the table for what's to come. I teased a little in our intro there that approaches to sales and marketing are lagging if we want to be nice, and often embracing legacy thinking. Would you elaborate on that a little bit for us?
Absolutely. So if you take the other divisions in companies or the other kind of management leaders, they've all evolved over the last 30, 40 years. And if you take, it started in manufacturing with W. Edwards Deming and goal rats and theory of constraints and applying just in time, or the Toyota way. And that evolution has been happening since the late 70s, early 80s, and using statistical thinking and using process and process improvement and understanding flow. That's been happening since the 80s. And then you take development and software development and service and critical chain project management. And all of these things have been evolving since the 90s and early 2000s. And where do you have sales? Still screaming and thinking carrot and stick management and cracking the whip. And, if your salespeople aren't working, you need to motivate them. Send them to training. It's just, we're decades behind the methodologies and the processes of the other divisions. And worse yet, we have more technology and more ability to do these improvements. And we're throwing tools at the problem without understanding the process.
So, I get a sense that often in sales, the default thinking is it's a people problem. We need to hire a new role. We need to just replace this one for the next superstar. But I'm getting the sense from what you're saying, you don't do it that same way. So if it's not always a people problem, how should we be thinking about all this?
And I really do appreciate that. And I think you're right. If we take what most companies think is the salesperson is this independent contributor. In fact, that's a lot what people list in the job listings. You're an independent contributor. Go out there and do. And then if they don't succeed, guess what? It's a them problem. And they validate that by saying, look, we have 10 people, 8 of them are failing, but 2 are succeeding. Therefore, it's the problem with the other 8 people, which is just, bad math. And you asked a very pointed question: what is the other methodology? And the other methodology is understanding sales as a system and understanding where sales and marketing fit into the bigger system. And the first thing is you have to understand how it ties into your strategy. What is your strategy, the business strategy, and what is your then go-to-market strategy? And how do you build a sales structure and a process that takes advantage of that strategy? Without those things being closely aligned, sure, you're going to get one or two salespeople who know how to play the game, who know how to manipulate their leadership, but you're not going to have a growing company. And you can't find enough people that are willing to manipulate the data and manipulate the leadership to get your way to growth. So the real alternative is understanding the process. And the process is built from the strategy. The strategy, the go-to-market strategy is built from the business strategy. Understanding what truly unique value the company has, how you position that in the marketplace, how you talk to that in the marketplace has nothing to do with the individual contributor, but everything to do with how the leadership team sets the team up for success.
I'm wondering, as we start thinking about this, often in the sales world in particular, we're hearing about very quarterly focused things. What's our target for this? We see very rash decisions sometimes, even just to make that number. So, what role do you see this kind of short-term thinking or focus playing to perhaps sabotage trying to do things the right way?
I couldn't agree with you more. The need to make your monthly or quarterly numbers is just such a disease. Short-term thinking is a disease that is killing companies. And the example of this is if you take any type of company that ends end of quarter sales, we're going to discount our price to make sure we hit our numbers. Or, we're coming up to a big board meeting. We really want to make sure we have these logos on board. Go ahead and lower your price. Or we just need to get these things over the board to impress our investors. So lower your price or offer more. Or what really scares me is when we offer things outside of our expertise to win the deal. And what happens there is you're training your customer. Of course, sales go up at the end of the quarter because our clients and our customers have learned that's the most economical time to buy. That is bad for our clients, that is bad for the market, and that is bad for the vendor and the company we're representing. It's a lose across the board, but due to that short-term thinking and to your point, the pressure of meeting quarterly numbers, it's something that just about every company does. And it's even more wild when it's a private company that doesn't even have to report their quarterly earnings.
What I'd like to do then, let's turn this and look forward a little. You covered it at a high level, but I'd be interested, could you dive a little bit deeper into, what should organizations then be doing differently? What might that look like?
I really appreciate that. And we'll start at the high level and go all the way down. And here's what my answer would be is that each and every person on the marketing and sales team has to be tied in with the business strategy. And that business strategy has to inform that go-to-market strategy. And they all have to be working very closely with whether it's product management, whether it's the manufacturing or the service departments, to understand capacity and when we should be pushing and evening out flow. And now that the next question is so great, how do we do that? And we re-engineer our pipeline meetings to understand, what are the critical steps to close? What are the actions we take to move those people to close? What are the value-added statements to manage that flow of prospects from, awareness to attracted to engaged to closed? You plan your work and you plan your flow against that to know where your constraint is in that process, to create a buffer in that constraint. All of that fun stuff that everyone's already doing in product development using Agile, or in manufacturing using the Toyota Way or theory of constraints, or in product or project management using critical chain. All of those things apply in marketing and sales. I know I use some big jargony there and some big terms, but the moral of the story is you manage the flow through each step of the sales process. and each step of the sales process has the value add that fits the business strategy. Did that make any sense at all?
Well, it absolutely does. And you've talked about something I'm very passionate about, which often, anytime we're dealing with strategy or these larger items pertaining to vision, is that cross-organizational approach and that need to really be engaged and have that connected tissue running, I guess you'd call it horizontally, and making sure we're all aligned. What that then leads me to, though, is it would be great, right, if our marketing and sales is on board in doing this, but you need the rest of the organization to be tied into that too and working in unison. So this makes me go a step up. What do we need to then get leadership buyer into this? Because often, leadership has been seeing this done the same way for the past 30 or 40 years. So you're asking for a real mind shift for many of them.
I couldn't agree with you more. When it comes to sales and marketing, we have to completely transform the way leadership approaches and thinks about it. The sales is not about a magic salesperson, but it's around an organization that puts customers and employees first. And in the end, that'll have more impact on shareholders' value than anything else. And to further that point, to that cross-functional points and how managers should be managing across functions, I have clients that we're working through removing sales departments at all and instead placing individual salespeople inside the product teams. And it's the idea that we need to manage the flow of how the customer or client interacts with your product or service. And understanding that flow and understanding how the customer wants to engage leads to an entirely different sales and marketing organization completely.
We talked a little bit about then where we could go. Often the road to the future can be paved with some interesting decisions. And sometimes, even with the best intentions in mind, we're not thinking about the continuity of what we're doing. So take me through the importance of making sure the changes you make through this are sustainable and actually not just the right answer for today. Because again, I would imagine even going through all this, it's pretty easy to come up with a solution that makes sense for now. But if I asked, is that going to be working in 2 months? You'd probably shake your head and say, no, that just works under the current system.
I think that's an interesting conversation, is how much do you focus on solving for today versus solving for tomorrow? And first and foremost, if you don't solve the problem of today, very rarely do you get to solve for the problem of tomorrow. And understanding the importance of the problem today without falling into the disease of short-term thinking can be a challenge. So what do you do about that? And that is understanding, again, let's understand the flow and the capacity and where those constraints happen. And plan for those constraints and start having some vision of how increasing at that constraint will shift and can shift the flow. And to do that, you do need a firm understanding of things like, hey, what is our total addressable market? Who is our ideal client profile? Where and how are we getting in front of them consistently and constantly to being able to pull this information in so that we are, quote unquote, future-proofing our system? And a lot of times what I'm seeing is people worrying at one extreme or the other without really understanding how you can play both by doing constraint management in the short term and understanding you're going to move the constraint and where you're going to move that constraint and planning for that. If you do that, you very rarely will create a short-term solution or create more of a problem in the future. Now, to your point, though, a lot of people will say, okay, just hire at the constraint, bring more people in. And that ends up leading to what we're seeing currently in the market, which is a lot of layoffs in sales. So I hear what you're saying, but if you plan for an effective solution at the actual constraint, rarely is that going to become the problem, is the long-term lack of sustainability. Did that? I hope I meandered towards that point there a little bit.
No, you definitely did. Thank you. And please feel free to protect the innocent on this next one. But I'm wondering if there's an example you can point to of someone who's actually been able to shift their approach and what kind of results or changes have they seen?
There's a bunch of examples that I can think of clients of ours that are going through this. We have a client, Ytronics. Ytronics has drastically transformed the way that they approach the market. They're pulling their product managers in sooner. They're pulling their salespeople are looking at it as a flow. Their leader, Chad Jasmine, is doing an excellent job of thinking about customer satisfaction and customer success. And part of that reason is he manages everything from marketing all the way through to customer success. So he's really got a finger on the pulse of that customer, and he's able to bring that information in. Larry Jordan, the president, is really thinking about the long-term vision and the viability of solving some of these problems that they're able to bring in at those times so that they can solve the future problems for train and the rail industry as well as the current. The idea there is that they took the enormous step of allowing Chad to manage all three levels of the customer engagement, and therefore Chad was involved in all of that, and he made his teams involved in all of that, and he focuses on what he calls the brand promise, and then making sure they're fulfilling on the brand promise. Make sense?
No, absolutely does. So as we look to wrap up here, do you have advice for someone who isn't sure maybe if they've fallen into this trap we've been discussing, or maybe even just some indicators they should be on the lookout?
Yeah, there's a couple indicators that happen in sales and marketing very early on, is if for each and every prospect you're having to create new sales enablement material, a new proposal, a new offer. You're having to redo your standard contracts. That is a big alarm bell that you're focused on individuals instead of systems thinking, and you're focused on winning an individual client as opposed to what the business and go-to-market strategy is. So that's one indicator. The second indicator is that your product team or your service team are constantly upset that they're having to alter the product or service itself based on what sales has sold. And there's always these add-ons. You're buying and creating tools to manage the variation of offers and clients, as opposed to, we have a pretty simple tool. If you're a SMB and you need a complex system, a complex ERP to manage all of the variations, and every time a product or service person touches a client, they have to go read a novel to figure out where everything is, that's a pretty big indicator that you have too much variation going on. And so those are big indicators to me. And the way to really check for this is look at your flow. Track the last 10 prospects that have gone through your flow and become clients. Track them and see how much variation there is between them. If there's very little, you've done a reasonably good job of creating a strategy and a process that can close and win clients. If to win those clients, you're dependent on a magic salesperson doing a great pitch, or a salesperson creating a lot of variation in the process, you're in a little bit of trouble. Make sense?
It absolutely does. And Jeff, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Now, before we go, is there anything you would like to say for those listening who would want to learn more?
Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have a pretty simple philosophy that simple scales and complex fails. And I believe that in marketing and sales. And I love the conversations about how to make your sales process, your sales strategy more resilient, specifically in these times. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm an active debater on there and love to have the discussion.
Again, thank you, Jeff. And we're going to include everything you've mentioned in the show notes for those who may not have captured that all, and hope everyone's enjoyed this latest edition in our Spotlight series. Thank you all for listening today. I look forward to joining you on the next episode. Until then, I'm Ryan Walter, and remember that solving your biggest business problems begins when you decide to accelerate your approach and achieve more.
At Parrels Advisory, our focus is your business's future. Having the right insight, experience, and perspective makes all the difference when tackling far-reaching issues within your company. We are here to simplify the steps, unlock your potential, and move you forward, making your vision a reality. We've helped startups achieve massive growth, mid-sized businesses navigate digital transformation, and enterprises embrace innovation. Wondering how to jumpstart your business and move it forward? Contact us to discuss your audacious goals during a complimentary consultation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Accelerate to Achieve. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen. Got a question, feedback on the program, or interested in being a guest? Simply go to parrels.co/A2A-podcast and send us a message. To learn more about our work or to book a consultation, visit us at parrels.co/contact. Until next time, remember that solving your biggest business problems begin when you decide to accelerate your approach and achieve more.